coming together culturally. And was that very important to you?
Well, it was very important. We got married in Kentucky, which is the state where my husband's family was from, but we had so many people fly from all over the world, including India. And so both our guest list and the ceremonies were sort of a representation of our very different backgrounds coming together. And my parents, of course, were married in a traditional Hindu ceremony. And so when I imagined weddings and what that might look like, I imagined the pictures that I'd seen of them.
But what did you and the Vice President like, especially at the Amer Fort?
Well, obviously the architecture is spectacular, and we really enjoyed seeing the mix of cultures that were brought in when they were building it in the first instance. So you see the Persian influence, and of course you see elements of Hinduism with the lotus references, and it was just a really interesting representation of the position that the Mughal Empire had at the time and the way that they were sort of projecting themselves. So it was a fascinating study in history.
You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. An action-packed bulletin lined up for you. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. Prime Minister Modi lands in Canada to attend the G7 summit. On his action-packed agenda, outreach session, bilaterals. It's Prime Minister Modi's first Canada visit in 10 years. Trump says that he will be departing from the G7 summit earlier than expected. He also says expelling Russia from the G7 was a mistake, and Trump will not be signing the G7 statement on Iran as per reports. This as Israel and Iran continue to exchange fire, and Iran launches more missiles aimed at Israel. Several explosions were heard in Tehran, and Trump has issued evacuation orders. Reports meanwhile state that Israel's Netanyahu has not ruled out eliminating Iran's Ayatollah Khamenei. Our big focus, Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed at the Calgary International Airport in Canada to attend the G7 summit that is taking place at the nearby Kananaskis village in Alberta. This is Prime Minister Modi's first visit to Canada since the year 2015, following an official invitation from Canadian Prime Minister Carney. And during this 23-hour touchdown, the Prime Minister will hold bilateral meetings with global leaders and attend the outreach sessions at the G7 summit, coming over a month after India's Operation Sindoor that targeted terror infrastructure in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Let me tell you why this trip is so significant though. This visit has global attention as it marks Prime Minister Modi's first visit to Canada since the diplomatic ties between our two countries deteriorated following the killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in 2023. Prime Minister Carney's invitation to Prime Minister Modi to attend this summit, it signals the new government's intent to repair the ties with New Delhi that plummeted to an all-time low over the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. In fact, in October last year, as I was mentioning, India recalled its High Commissioner and 5 other diplomats after Ottawa attempted to link them to the Nijjar case. India, by the way, also expelled an equal number of Canadian diplomats, and India had accused Justin Trudeau's government of allowing pro-Khalistani elements to operate from Canadian soil. Now, is this going to be a new chapter as far as India-Canada ties are concerned? And can we certainly say there's a thaw as far as our ties are concerned? Well, Maha Siddiqui has been tracking all the finer developments, the key details as far as the G7 summit is concerned. She joins us live at the moment. Maha, take us through the plan of action for the day. Also, the buzz around Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Carney. Is there genuine warmth? or is this just diplomatic choreography post-Trudeau, as some argue?
Well, it's too early to say whether there's genuine warmth. And also, the personality of Prime Minister Carney is not one where he's very expressive in his expressions. He's very restrained as far as expressing himself in expressions, in body language. He makes statements which are apt. He's also been a banker and an economist, so he relies on those aspects of using the language of economy, using the language of finance to be able to express himself and the requirements of the current times where we are seeing the jolt to the global economy, and also the needs of the Canadians, which are so closely linked to the jolt to the global economy, to their own economy since COVID-19, the pandemic, where we have seen a housing crisis. We've also seen an inflation, very high inflation in Canada. So he addresses those issues rather than talking like any politician, considering he is not a career politician. Therefore, the manner in which he and Prime Minister Modi will be meeting tomorrow will certainly be interesting to watch out for, but I can tell you that it will be hard to judge from his body language or expressions exactly what he intends to do. But his words will pretty much make it clear, like he has in defending his decision to invite Prime Minister Modi, to invite India at the high table at G7 as an invitee country. And he said that India, being one of the biggest economies in the world, a critical peg in the supply chains, had to be at the high table. In fact, this also gives us a reason now to listen into some voices from the business community, Indo-Canadian businessmen who feel that an improvement in the relationship between India and Canada could lead to tapping this sector, that is the trade between the two countries, the various sectors in trade that have been left untapped between India and Canada. Listen in.
Feeling a sense of betrayal from the United States, Canada is looking to diversify its trading partners. And here's where India comes into focus. As a critical country in the Indo-Pacific, Canada recognizes the importance of India, and the new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, wants to leverage this relationship now by the first step that he's taking in trying to improve the ties. How will this help the trading community as well, which has been looking out for improvement in ties? I have with me a group of business persons here in Calgary, and they are keenly awaiting the Prime Minister's visit in the hope that this will act as an icebreaker. What are the sectors where you see an improvement in trade between India and Canada, especially once the relationship gets better?
Yeah, I think it would be mainly oil and gas, which is basically India's importer. LNG they can import from Canada, and then oil also. And that is the big for India. And then for Canada, it is vice versa. It should be basically defense and technology and IT.
India's goods trade with Canada is highly under potential. As far as services trade is concerned, it is slightly better. Do any of you see any other sectors where you believe that improvement is going to impact the overall relationship as well, make the two countries come closer via trade? You want to speak?
Thank you for the question. I think this is a very important point for the Canadians. As we all know, as a Canadian, there are lots of healthcare issues here in Canada. And as an individual, as a group, all Canadian, most of them are waiting to get the treatment. I will give you just a small example very quickly. One of my known's husband, he diagnosed with the last stage cancer, and they told us that he's here for only for 3 months, but the waiting list is for 6 months. So this is what we are all Canadians are facing, and this is very, very important. We are looking for a healthcare industry, and India is the one that we can look forward.
With regards to issues like visas as well, they become a problem whenever there is a friction between the two countries, causing a lot of problem to the common man. But I want you all to explain the fallout on the trading community as well, the business persons, when such visa hurdles are created.
So I can say one thing, there is so many gossips going between both countries. Right now, the relation going to start right away. So might be once they sit both countries together, there is so many things they have to settle, and especially the visa, student visas are work permits. Right now, 2025, there is so many visas is expiring. Fortunately, if both countries has like a good relation, definitely they can give like a good opportunity for the newcomers or like students or everyone. We are expecting those things, and certainly these things will settle by this G7 meeting. Hope for best. That's it.
And for an expert's view, let's bring in former diplomat Ashok Sajjanhar, who joins us on NDTV at the moment. Sir, thank you so much for making time for us. We're trying to make sense of what's not being said as well at this point in terms of the India-Ottawa ties and the reset. Sir, how does India navigate a G7 that seems so deeply divided within on war, on trade, also the US President Donald Trump?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Parmeshwar. And you're very right. You know, it's not only the G7 that is hugely divided. The world is hugely divided. And of course, there are different interests in as far as different countries are concerned. And of course, Mr. Trump, ever since he took over the presidency the second time, he has truly become the disruptor in chief in the world. And whether it is in the area of economy, in the area of tariffs and trade, or it is in the area of peace, security, his what he is going to say, what he is going to do, that has been there's a huge uncertainty that is attached to it, and he also keeps changing his positions very quickly. So all those aspects G7 will have to contend with, will have to deal with. And, he, right after landing also, he has made several controversial statements, that Russia should not have been thrown out of G7 in 2014. China should be a member of G7. G7 is a grouping of democratic countries. So, all these things, rather than helping countries to come together, they create more fissures and divisions. So it's going to be a challenge to deal with global issues like trade, like tariffs, like wars, like peace, security, and the instability, the increasing instability,
Speaking of wars and instability, sir, we will of course delve into that in just a moment. But Mark Carney has invited our Prime Minister to reset ties, many say, post the Trudeau era. I want to know your opinion, sir, but how much political capital can Canada actually offer in this current G7 chaos status?
Yeah, I think G7 is one track, Parmeshwar, and bilaterals are another track, a parallel track. And this is what happens, all around, whether you look at G20 meetings, G7 meetings. I think one of the most important takeaways from such global meetings is in terms of the bilaterals which take place on the sidelines, because they are the ones that really take relationships forward. Because, normally what happens as far as the plenary statements are concerned, which the leaders will make on G7 platform, whatever is the final declaration, it is going to be not all that much different from whatever has been said earlier on these particular issues by these countries. But it is the bilaterals. And I think the most important, in my view, as you have very correctly said, I think it's the India-Canada relations, which is going to be on focus as far as India is concerned. And also, I think Prime Minister's meeting or interaction, whichever way it takes place with President Donald Trump, because after February 13, when Prime Minister Modi was in Washington, D.C., and we had very good meetings, after that, the path that we have covered has been rather choppy. So, how do we take it forward?
Has been ruled out because Donald Trump has cut short his visit. He's heading back home, citing the tensions in the Middle East. Speaking of the Middle East, sir, as we wrap, how should India play the Middle East flashpoint? Prime Minister Modi is in Canada. How should we play our cards between a US-backed Israel and a G7 increasingly critical of Tel Aviv?
Yeah, I think basically we have played our cards well. We have always stood for peace, for dialogue and diplomacy. You would recall in September 22, when Prime Minister Modi met Mr. Putin in Samarkand, he said this is not an era of war. And I think it is the same statement that is equally applicable to Israel and Iran confrontation. Both of them are good friends. And if tensions rise, if the conflict rises further, as it seems to be doing right now, because Iran has also struck back and struck back in a very vicious way at many of the Israeli cities, Haifa, Tel Aviv, and others. So it is going to have an impact on many countries, particularly India, particularly developing countries. And Prime Minister Modi has always articulated the voice of the global south at all these international fora. And here also, he's going to be talking about rising prices of energy, of fuels, of connectivity, of increasing debt as far as developing countries are concerned. So I think India has taken a very principled stand, which is also, in terms of the realpolitik, it is a very appropriate position by not joining the SCO declaration that was made criticizing only one side, that is Israel, condemning only Israel. So I think we have to we have to work together for dialogue and negotiations between the two sides.
Developments with you, sir. Just want to thank you so much for your time. We'll of course revert you for regular updates on the key takeaways as far as this G7 summit is concerned. Meanwhile, I must bring you a quick update as far as the outcomes of the G7 so far are concerned. Well, Donald Trump is cutting short his visit. He's going to be heading home right after supper, flying over the North American Atlantic overnight. Meanwhile, he had an impromptu meeting with the European Commission President before signing a trade deal with the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He also had a word put in for his dear friend Vladimir Putin. In fact, he has questioned why Russia is no longer part of this prestigious grouping. He said expelling Russia from the G7 was a mistake, and it's not a bad idea for China to join the G7 summit. These are the words of the US President Donald Trump saying it isn't a bad idea for China to join this grouping. Reports though state, considering whatever is happening as far as Israel and Iran are concerned, Trump is saying he will not sign the joint G7 statement on Iran. News and updates continue after this very short commercial break. We're back in a moment with the latest. Do stay tuned.
When facts are fragmented, we put the pieces together. Where power collides with truth, we are there.
Behind me is that massive security arrangements that are in place.
Behind fractured boundaries, we clear the fog of war. Fault Lines with Gauri Dwivedi, only on NDTV World.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
In 2003 is when Munna Bhai MBBS happens to you.
Right.
Dr. Asthana. And then in 2009 is when you become Virus in Three Idiots. and then you make a directorial venture through Mehta Boys.
Right.
It has been quite a journey.
Yes.
But these two characters were particularly those which are seen as iconic. Would you say that they reshaped your entire, acting career?
You're absolutely right. People identify me with these two characters. I have had a learning curve through a lot of other characters too, but yes, there's no denial that these two, and if I might be allowed to put in one more, was Khosla Ghosla Khurana. Because, and you're from Delhi, right? And I was cast for that role and I was very hesitant. I went to Delhi to do some research on the character and I met a young actor over there, not young in my eyes, who said, I'm a little upset with you. I said, why? He said, I auditioned for this role. And of course, you didn't get it. So, but why are you upset with me? Tell the casting director or the director, why are you blaming me? He says, you see, you're a Parsi from Bombay. You're a Parsi from Mumbai. If I get a very important role of a Parsi in Mumbai, how would you feel? Yeah, he got a point. I said, now what are we going to do about this? So I said, and I gave such a fantastic audition. I researched and researched. I said, I tell you what, I got a better idea. Teach me. Help me. You must take help. And I used his help and I sat with him and I did my research. For me, it was a very crucial role in my life, simply because
Welcome back. Our big focus remains the escalating tensions as far as Israel and Iran are concerned. Israeli forces issued an evacuation order to residents of a large part of Tehran, warning them of the imminent bombing of military infrastructure in that area in a social media post very similar to those that were regularly directed at Palestinians in Gaza over the past 20 months. Israel heralded full aerial superiority over Tehran skies and issued an evacuation warning for a district in the capital before bombing an Iranian state broadcaster. In fact, in the latest information coming in at this point, Iran's air traffic regulator has extended the no-flight status to 2 p.m. Tuesday local time. That's the latest coming in from Iran, where the air traffic regulator has extended the no-flight status to 2 p.m. Tuesday local time. But for an expert's view on the matter, let's go across to Arab and Middle East expert joining us live from America at the moment, James Bowden. James, always a pleasure to chat with you. Has Israel already crossed a red line by bombing Tehran's state broadcaster?
Definitely so. I mean, it is very clearly spelled out in international law that media outlets are civilian infrastructure and that they are immune from targeting unless they are serving as a very strong and very specific propaganda purpose and function for the government, which when it comes to the Iranian government, there's a very fine line there. But it was definitely an illegal strike. But we have seen this routinely with Israel, where they have decided to reject those international norms and go with the most extreme situation that they can, which makes me greatly fearful for the future.
James, as we speak, what's more dangerous right now? Iran retaliating or Iran holding back?
With Iran, they have very few options. I mean, the most dangerous thing that I see on the horizon, and really I believe that the reason why Donald Trump left the G7 summit early was I think that he shares a very deep fear that the Israelis are going to bomb and attempt to assassinate Ayatollah Khamenei. And that would spark, I think that would be the inciting event that would spark a regional uprising. We've been surging resources into the region, a lot of tankers, air refueling tankers, and other resources, which have only one main purpose, and that is to clean up any mess that Israel creates in the region.
Right. You mentioned the aircraft. Well, 2 US aircraft carriers are now in the Middle East, as we're given to understand. James, and does this signal de-escalation or a countdown to direct war?
Well, I think it actually, again, signals that there's going to be an escalation, and as much that the Israelis, I'm going to have to go with my gut feeling on this, and that they are very close to killing Khamenei, assassinating him, or that the American administration suspects that that is coming. And so that would be an escalation, and it would be a very fearful one, because what it would do is it would also radically destabilize Iran. Iran has a lot of separatist movements and groups within its borders, and if they eliminate the head political leadership, I fear that Iran would become a big danger to its neighbors. And the Middle East just doesn't want to see that. And I don't think that Central Asian countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, and even India want to deal with a number of independent movements that threaten their borders.
James, always a pleasure to hear your views. Thanks so much for joining us on NDTV.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, you must note that thousands of Indian nationals, including medical students, are in Iran as the strikes between Tehran and Tel Aviv continue. Students from Karnataka studying medicine at the Shahid Beheshti University in Tehran, for example, they've actually reached out to the state government for help to evacuate them from Iran. The students are currently with Indian embassy officials amid the ongoing conflict, but most medical students are from Jammu and Kashmir. There are many from southern states, as I mentioned, like Karnataka. Many Indian citizens are from Kerala and other states that are currently stuck in Iran. Some students spoke to NDTV about their condition as they are stranded there. Listen in.
Right now, we are getting relocated to Tehran outskirts, just because the strikes are continuously going on, the strikes from Israel. As you see the smokes around, the flames around, it's all chaos here. The roads are closed. We have been stuck. Right now, completely stuck. We don't know what to do. The atmosphere is so tense right now.
तो देखिए हमारे यहाँ पे 450 के आसपास इंडियन स्टूडेंट्स है खाली, तो महाराष्ट्र से भी है, बैंगलोर से भी बच्चे हैं कुछ, और सब शहीद बेइज्जती के बच्चे हैं। बस एक दो कुछ बच्चे हैं जो लाइक अपनी यूनिवर्सिटी के साथ नहीं जा पाए, तो वो हमारी यूनिवर्सिटी के साथ अब जा रहे हैं वहीं पे, और बाकी यूनिवर्सिटी के बच्चे भी लाइक जो नजदीकी तेहरान की यूनिवर्सिटीज के बच्चे हैं वो भी उधर ही जा रहे हैं जहाँ हम जा रहे हैं। एम्बेसी वालों ने उनको भी उधर ही लिया, और एम्बेसी वालों ने बोला है कि वो असेस करेंगे कि कंडीशन कैसी रहेगी इन दिनों, उसके बाद या तो इंडिया वापस लेंगे या तो अगर हालात ठीक हो गए देन दे विल शिफ्ट अस बैक टू तेहरान।
As always, we'll keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned. We're slipping into a very quick commercial break.
When facts are fragmented, we put the pieces together. Where power collides with truth, we are there.
Behind me is that massive security arrangements that are in place.
Behind fractured boundaries, we clear the fog of war. Fault Lines with Gauri Dwivedi, only on NDTV World.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
When facts are fragmented, we put the pieces together. Where power collides with truth, we are there.
Behind me is that massive security arrangements that are in place.
Behind fractured boundaries, we clear the fog of war. Fault Lines with Gauri Dwivedi, only on NDTV World.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Breakfast News. I'm Gargi Rawat. Coming up ahead, the Prime Minister has landed in Canada for the G7. US President Donald Trump has cut short his G7 visit as the conflict between Israel and Iran has entered the 5th day. Let's take a look at the headlines we're tracking at this hour. Prime Minister Modi arrives in Canada's Calgary to attend G7 summit, his first visit to Canada in a decade. On the agenda, outreach session and several bilaterals. US President Donald Trump has cut short his Group of 7 meeting. Will return to Washington tonight, citing the Middle East situation. Also writes a post on social media urging Tehran to evacuate as there's another wave of retaliation by Iran. An Air India flight from San Francisco to Mumbai via Kolkata suffers a technical snag in one of its engines. Passengers are required to be deplaned in Kolkata, which was a scheduled halt. Today, the funeral of Captain Sumit Sabharwal to take place. He is the pilot who had commanded the ill-fated Air India Flight 171 that crashed shortly after takeoff. Open tourism push in Kashmir after the deadly Pahalgam attack. Now 16 of 48 popular tourist destinations will reopen for tourists today. And Meta has announced it will be introducing ads and subscriptions to WhatsApp in coming months, the social networking giant seeking to accelerate its revenue push. All right, up first, let's get you all the latest from the G7. Let's go across to my colleague Maha Siddiqui, who joins us there from Canada. And Maha, lots happening. The Prime Minister has arrived just a short while ago. Also, Donald Trump cutting short his G7 visit.
Yes, Gargi, absolutely right. Donald Trump is cutting short his G7 summit visit to Canada and flying back to Washington, D.C. after the dinner of the heads of state this evening. And Prime Minister Modi has landed in Calgary, in Alberta, where we are at the moment, just about an hour ago. And from here, the outreach session for the invitees that gets underway tomorrow. The invited countries get ready to their statements at the G7 summit. The grouping of the richest countries and the European Union. This grouping, in fact, has seen divergence of views and differing priorities because of the onslaught of tariffs coming from one of their own members, that is the United States of America. President Donald Trump, since he took office this January, has unleashed a tariff onslaught against both foes and friends, including against Canada, which at the moment has 25% tariff on automobiles, 50% tariff on aluminum and steel, and 10% tariff on energy. Amidst all these issues, the bigger issue that has at this moment overshadowed the G7 summit is that of the conflict between Israel and Iran. And President Donald Trump going back to Washington, D.C. with the White House stating this as the reason. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, though, said that this was a positive move because he believes this signals that President Trump could push for ceasefire now. However, if President Trump's own social media statements are seen on Truth Social, as Gargi pointed out just a short while back, he said that people in Tehran should evacuate, and also pointed out how Iran had not, in fact, gone in for a nuclear deal with the US, resulting in this situation. Meanwhile, with the possibility of improvement of ties between India and Canada, with the Prime Minister accepting the invitation from the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and coming to the G7 summit, also participating in the outreach tomorrow, and then holding a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney, all sending a message to the communities on both sides, especially the Indian community in Canada, that there could be better times after 2 years of friction between India and Canada. This is giving hope to a lot of people, especially the youngsters, the student community in Canada that comes from India. The largest chunk of international students is from India, and they have felt the pressure of the friction between the two countries. They are welcoming the visit of the Prime Minister. Let's listen in to some voices now.
Indian students are a global lot these days. But what that means is a friction between the governments of two countries can have an immediate fallout on this younger lot. I have with me a group of students from India here in Canada. Let's speak to them about their expectations now that the relations between India and Canada seem to be improving. Many thanks all of you for speaking with NDTV. I'll start off with you. What expectation do you now have for the students, considering that there were some unique problems that students from India were facing in Canada? Do you think the fact that Prime Minister Modi is coming to Canada is a good sign even for the students?
I think it's an amazing sign, and as someone who calls herself a youth leader here in Calgary and Chesmere, I'm very, very happy to say that we, the students here as well as the Indian diaspora, we are eagerly ready to welcome Prime Minister Modi ji into Canada, and we really hope that this visit leads to a better alignment of Canada and India's values as well as their goals for both nations, and they work towards developing and building a mutually beneficial and effective relationship and alliance which can help and benefit both populations of India and Canada, and definitely can help some of our students as well, and we don't feel so split amongst our loyalties as well as amongst, you know, which country to favor, because, you know, both of them are our homes. India is our Janmbhumi, Canada is our Karambhumi, and we really, really love both nations, and it absolutely hurts us and it breaks us to see the separation and the division that we see here in the Indian diaspora because of these geopolitical issues.